Good morning, class. In this lesson, we're going to look at quadratics, which means quadratic functions and equations. So far, we have looked at many aspects of linear equations and inequalities. Today, we start on quadratics. Please pay close attention so you can comprehend the concept, at least the procedure of using the methods of finding solutions and so forth, and factoring as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what does it mean for an equation or an expression to be quadratic? That means the expression or the equation has a highest exponent of 2. If you look at all the degrees, the highest one you will find is 2. That means the expression or the equation is a quadratic. Okay? Good. Here's an example. This is an equation. 4x squared plus 3x equals negative 12. Now, let's look at the terms. Let's look at each term separately. The first term we have 4x squared. The exponent is 2. The second term we have is 3x. The exponent is 1. The third term we have is negative 12. The exponent is 0, considering the exponent for the variable. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the highest exponent we have here is 2, which means that 4x squared plus 3x equals negative 12 is a quadratic. Okay? All right. Now, this is what I want you to notice, that the same applies to an expression. An expression simply does not have an equal sign, such as the example provided. 3x squared plus x minus 7 is a quadratic. The highest exponent is 2. The difference here, it is an expression and not an equation. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, particularly when you're dealing with quadratics, what you will be asked is to solve it. You probably will be asked to find the solutions, to find the roots, to find the x-intercepts, and to find the zeros. All these vocabularies mean the same thing. So, in order for you to do any of that, the first and foremost, you have to factor the equation and set it equal to 0. You're going to see that. So the first step is to factor. Let us look at what we're going to have here. All right? Now, given that when you're solving, you're going to have to isolate the variable. Okay? You have to get the letter by itself. All right? Now, let us look at one equation as given. The equation x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. That is an equation. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to factor that equation before you can solve it, because you have to get the letter x by itself. As a result, we factor this in this manner, such that we have x plus 2 times the expression x minus 5 and should equal 0. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to apply the 0 product property. What does that mean? If two things multiply to give you 0, that means one or the other equals 0 or both. So what we do with the expressions we have here that multiply to give us 0, we take the first one, set it equal to 0, and we get the second one, set it equal to 0. Just as you have x plus 2 equals 0, we set x minus 5 equals 0 as well. And now in each case, we're going to get x by itself. All right? When we set them equal to 0, that's the 0 product property. Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the first one, we did the additive inverse of positive 2. That's a negative 2 to both sides of the equation equals negative 2. X equals negative 2. Similarly, we do the same thing for x minus 5 equals 0. So we do the additive inverse of negative 5. That is a positive 5 on both sides of the equation, and x equals 5. These two, x equal negative 2 and x equals 5, are what we call solutions. They're the same thing we call zeros. They're the same thing we call x-intercept. They're the same thing we call roots. All these mean the same thing. Okay. All right? So they're the solution of the equation x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Let us consider the equation x squared plus 7x minus 18 equals 0. Ladies and gentlemen, you must factor first. Factor it. And you will end up with the following: x plus 9 and x minus 2. The expression x plus 9 times the expression x minus 2 equals 0. Now we have to apply the 0 product property just like we did before. We get the first expression, set it equal to 0 by itself, take the second expression, set it equal to 0, and get x by itself. Okay? And now we get additive inverse of positive 9, which is negative 9 on both sides, and x equals negative 9. Similarly, additive inverse of negative 2, positive 2 on both sides, and x equals positive 2. Ladies and gentlemen, the solutions, the zeros, the roots, the x-intercepts of x squared plus 7x minus 18 equals 0, or x equals negative 9 and x equals 2. There's a quick way to learn how to factor quadratics. Consider the expression ax squared plus bx plus c. Once you have two plus signs that separate the three terms, in the parentheses you will have plus signs as well. Keep that in mind. You're going to need to memorize these little steps. It makes your factoring skill easier. If you have a plus and a minus sign that separate the two terms, where the plus sign comes first, that means the higher factor carries the positive sign. It will have a plus sign. You will see that as you see an example. And let's look at when we have a plus and minus sign, but the minus sign comes first. In this case, the minus sign, in this case, both of them are minus if the last one is positive. And where you have two minuses, you're going to have a plus and minus. In this case, the highest number, the highest factor carries the negative sign. You will see some example of that. Now, consider the following. This is an application of quadratics. A bedroom is 3 feet longer than it is wide, as shown in the figure there, and has an area of 154. Find the measurement of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, we notice that the room is rectangular. How do we find the area of a rectangle? You should say it is length times height, or length times width. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what happens? We're going to do that, but we know the length, but we do not know the width. The length is 3 more than whatever the width is. So if we know the width, we will know the length as well. So let's set it up in this manner. We do not know the width, so we use W. The length is whatever the width is plus 3. And if we multiply these two to find the area, ladies and gentlemen, it equals 154 square feet. From there, we apply the distributive property, and we have W squared plus 3W equals 154. But ladies and gentlemen, to find that W by itself, or 1W, we want W by itself, we must set that equation equal to 0. We must, in order to solve a quadratic equation, we must set the equation equal to 0. Please do not forget that step. And so we carry on by doing the additive inverse of 154 to both sides of the equation. Hence, we obtain, ladies and gentlemen, we get W squared plus 3W minus 154 equals 0. At this particular time, I must factor. Now notice the two signs. I have a plus and a minus. So that means what? I'm going to have a plus and minus in my factoring, but the higher number will have a positive sign. Let us look at that. Once we do that, since to get W squared, it is W times W. All right, we got that. Now, we need two numbers that will multiply to give me 154, ladies and gentlemen. Two numbers that multiply to give me 154, but when I combine them together, when I take the sum of them, I get a positive 3. Which number does that? And you will notice, if you have to do a t-table and so forth, or consider all the factors of 154, you will end up with 14 and 11. That, ladies and gentlemen, if I take 14 plus negative 11, I get positive 3. And if I have 14 times negative 11, I get a negative 154. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I apply the zero product property. Once we factored, we apply the zero product property. That means the first part equal to 0, the second part equal to 0. It is at this point I must get W by itself by doing the additive inverse of 14 on both sides of the equation. I obtain W equals negative 14. On the other side, I get additive inverse of negative 11. I have W equals 11. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the width cannot be negative 14. I would like you to think about it. Why it cannot be negative 14? Ladies and gentlemen, distance cannot be negative. That's not possible. Can you walk negative 14 feet? No. You walk 14 feet. Your direction might change, but you still walk 14 feet. So, because that W equals negative 14, that simply does not make sense. As a result, we will have W equals 11 is the length, is the measurement rather, of the width of the room. So if we take 11 plus 3, so we know the length of the room is 14. So the room has a dimension of 11 by 14. Okay? Now, consider this scenario. Well, in this scenario, the construction worker is on the 24th floor of a building, as shown in the picture. The worker accidentally dropped a wrench and immediately yells, "Look out!" Could a person on the ground hear this warning in time to get out of the way of the falling wrench? Let us consider the situation. It is a situation, scenario. You have to put yourself in it, ladies and gentlemen. There are a couple of things we would need for this particular scenario. The person yelling. How long would it take the person on the ground to hear that yell? So we would need to know the sound, the speed of sound travels by 1100 foot per minute. That is feet rather. The sound travel 1100 feet per minute, and we need to know how tall is the building. Well, the building is 24 floors. Okay, it has 24 floors. Now I have to know how tall is each floor. These are the things I would need to solve this particular problem. Now, if each floor is 12 feet tall, each floor is 12 feet tall. So that means if I have 24 floors, ladies and gentlemen, how tall is the building? Okay. So the building would be 288. Now, if that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, I would now need the free fall equation. The free fall equation of Newton's formula. Ladies and gentlemen, that is of course the h, which is the height of a free fall object, is negative 16t squared plus v naught times t plus h naught. V naught is what we call the initial velocity, and h naught is the initial height, just the initial height. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we know our information due to free fall, v naught, the initial velocity, is 0. Okay? It was not pushed, it was not thrown, it just happened to fall. Gravity. As a result, ladies and gentlemen, we have the initial height of this object at the top of the building is 288. Remember, the building has 24 floors. Each floor is 12 feet tall. Unlike the picture here that says it's 240. I believe with the picture, they consider the height of each floor to be 10. But we did 12. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now that we have that, we follow by substituting. We know that equation is going to be h equals negative 16t squared. Since v is 0, 0 times t is 0, and plus h, the initial height, which is 288. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we want to know how long will it take for the wrench to hit the ground. How long will it take for the wrench to hit the ground? Which means, which will make h 0. So 0 has to equal negative 16t squared plus 288. Notice in the previous one, I told you to solve a quadratic. The first step is to make the equation equal 0. It has to equal 0, ladies and gentlemen. And now, in this case, we must isolate t. We must get t by itself. There are many ways to do that. In this case, we can do the additive inverse of 288. Let us rewrite the equation here. If we do the additive inverse of 288, we get the negative 288 on both sides of the equation. So we end up negative 288 equals negative 16t squared. Ladies and gentlemen, now we must multiply by negative 1 over 16, because that is the multiplicative inverse of negative 16. And hence, we get the following. So now we have t squared equals 18. That is t squared. But ladies and gentlemen, we do not wish to have t squared because we want t by itself. And to do that at this point, we take the square root of both sides of the equation. The square root is to get rid of the exponent 2. All right? And now, ladies and gentlemen, to do that, we get 4.24, which means that is approximately 4 seconds to 4. All right? That is how long it will take the wrench to fall on the ground. But the question also asks, does the person on the ground have enough time to get out of the way? Remember, the sound travels at 1100 feet per minute. Okay, so let us see what we have here. All right. Yes, the person would have enough time to get out. Because if we have 4.24, 4 seconds, 0.24, now at 1100 feet per per minute, that's more than enough time for the person to hear and get out of the way. All right? Now, I would like you to try this one. If you need help with it, you can work in groups. I will assist you, but I need you to try the situation. All right. After that, I would like you to try this. This is an easier one. I would like you to complete it and return it to me via Google Classroom. You must complete and return this one to me. If you have any questions, let me know. I will try to answer you promptly and efficiently. Okay.